Best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casted as God. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome, DFS Army. It's FantasyFling back this year again for your Millie Maker review. We're going to take a look at some MME strategy. We're going to look at the Millie Maker. We're going to see what won it. And we're also going to do just a whole week in review. I'm going to be taking that over this year. So cash game strategy, small tournaments, Millie Maker. We're going to take a look at it all. So let's get into it. All right, so we're doing cash game breakdowns this year for DFS Army subscribers. If you are a DFS Army subscriber, you get our cash game strategy, which helps you cash 13, 14 weeks out of the season, which if you do that, you're doing well in cash. If you're not a DFS Army subscriber, use code FantasyFling for 10% off VIP subscription. Well, let's go take a look what we did in cash games this week. So there was a pretty good value and it was spelled out for us pretty well. Now, obviously some of the values plays that we had didn't hit, but it didn't really matter because what we were trying to do in cash is we're looking for a couple values, rookies, backups, whatever, who are thrusted and now into a starting role and are going to get a lot of looks so they can pay off their salary. And this way we can add in all the studs. We can get the high floor, high owned players. In cash, we are looking to eat chalk. You get as much of it as you can. It actually provides kind of a safety net, right? So for example, Isaiah Likely, $3,000. I believe he was 20% owned. And some contests as high as 30% owned. So even though he failed, it didn't really matter because it was a free square. He was $3,000. He got 1 point. It didn't matter because about a third of the field had him, especially in cash games. He was very highly owned. So things like that, that's just one thing to keep in mind. A lot of times people will be like, oh my God, I shouldn't have played that $3,000 or $4,000 player. Totally crashed my lineup. And then you look at it and it's like, well, half of the field had him. So that wasn't really what crashed your lineup. It was all the other decisions you made. So Justin Herbert, we knew he was in a great spot. We were all over it. The Miami Los Angeles Chargers game, this game went off for 70 points, just crushed it. And then Aaron Jones was coming up in the optimals. He was just looking really good. He was in a great spot going against a Chicago team that was bad against the run last year. So we had to play Aaron Jones. He was great value at 6,300. And, you know, in that Justin Herbert game, the thing is you don't normally need to stack, obviously, in cash games, but we knew that this game had a high total. So we wanted as many pieces of it as we could because there was a lot of stars. The game had a high total. We knew we'd have a high floor with guys like Tyreek Hill. So we got Herbert and Tyreek Hill, and then, you know, paying down for the likes of Isaiah Likely and Marvin Mims was able to get us Justin Jefferson. And then we had, you know, really a mini stack in this game too. Again, we're not forcing stacks in cash games, but we're looking for the right game environment and we're looking for, you know, studs. So Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin going against that porous Vikings defense. We knew he would do well, obviously, decently. Most of the tutties went to Mike Evans, but he was only 5,900. He got us 10 points. That's perfectly fine for cash games, right? 5,900, 10 points. Not going to win a tournament. You got double-digit points, so more than enough. The Commanders D, as I said, You want to fade that in GPPs, but in cash games, you want to eat that chalk if they were in too good of a spot. And if they absolutely romped, you were going to lose if you didn't play them. So you just had to play them because they were going to be the chalk, and they were. Again, we want to play the chalk in cash games. So something to keep in mind, really, just Herbert, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, and Godwin and Tyreek Hill and the Commanders D really brought it home. If you can get 150 plus points in your cash games, you're going to cash most weeks. That's exactly what we did. I actually won about 94 out of 100 cash games. I just did all head-to-heads this past week. So head-to-heads are really what you want to do, because if you have a great cash week, you're really crushing head-to-heads. I literally won 94% of them. And certainly I didn't have the best lineup this week. So, made a mistake here and there. Should have played Jaden Reed over Marvin Mims, is what it is, but still was able to cash. So that's something to keep in mind going forward. High floor players, chalk players. And really, if you're a DFS Army subscriber and you run the domination station, you smash in a door, you smash a love on a few core players that we really like this week. We're going to hit optimize, and we're going to take the one of the two top optimals, whichever one you like the most, and that's going to win most weeks by far in cash. So that's pretty much going to do it for as far as a cash game review goes. We're going to take a look at a few other contests right before we get into the Millie Maker review. That'll be the next portion of the podcast. So couple of the contests that I attacked this week, in addition to the Millie Maker. So this is another thing. If you are trying to be a profitable DFS player, one of the things that you want to do is you want to play these small tournaments, whether they're low stakes, high, mid stakes, whatever it may be. This is like the best way to be a profitable DFS player. You're not trying to beat 30,000 people. You're not trying to beat 100,000 people. It's not the Millie Maker on week one where you're trying to beat 1.1 million people. You are literally only trying to beat 100 people. These tournaments are very profitable. I actually maxed the Millie Maker this last week, lost about $250 in it. But because I played these small tournaments, I had a portfolio of my contests, I was able to make a profit on the week for the most part. So, well, I did. I made about 600 overall. And it was really just because of this one tournament. Now, funny story with this one. I was actually chasing overlay because it was about 10 minutes before lock. And this tournament with 111 entries, there was only like 30 or 40 entries. So really, I just put a super chalky lineup in here because I thought really it wouldn't even be close to filling. And, I was just trying to get that equity of just cashing in it, because the top 27, I think 27th place, it paid $150. So I was like, I have a great chance to get 27th place and make a profit. And then also, just putting a chalky lineup in here, if chalk smashes, have a great chance to win it. So that's exactly what happened. I put a few different lineups in here with, one pivot here and there. These types of tournaments, you can really win just by playing the chalk. It's a variation off of your cash lineup. You're going to make one pivot here, one pivot there. So for example, one lineup I may have played Marvin Mims. The other lineup I played Jaden Reed. So you can see this is almost exactly like my cash lineup that I played. But yeah, $100 entry. And, I won 600. I think at this spot, won about 600. So two top 10 finishes. This is exactly what you want. These types of tournaments, you don't need a ton of leverage. You're not trying to beat 100,000 people. So just keep that in mind. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Millie Maker, because that's what the show is mainly about. Millie Maker, what won it this past week, and then also some MME strategy of top DFS pros. So let's go to the Millie Maker real quick. I mean, I told y'all I played a lot of head-to-heads. Okay. So we're gonna go to the top of the leaderboards. This is the lineup that won the Millie Maker, and of course, we're getting get into that real quick. But one thing I want to show you: this is how we do at DFS Army. Sliders. You can't see his Avi right here, but you can, if you played in the Millie Maker, you can go look it up. Sliders is the DFS Army VIP. This is last year, I believe he placed second place in the Millie Maker. And by the way, we had a DFS Army VIP who won it last year. That was Rapid Fire XD. He actually won this exact contest week 1. But Sliders is another guy who has placed in the Millie Maker in the top 50-ish like twice in the past year. In fact, last year he placed second, and he was like, I think, of a fraction of a point from winning it. And this is his second appearance here. So we were all over to Geek in the Players Club. He broke it down for us. Tua, Herbert, both sides of this. So he had a Tua stack with Tyreek Hill and then an Austin Eckler bring back. So absolutely smashing stack right here, which we'll see the guy that won the Millie Maker. And then Austin Eckler, obviously in that stack, Aaron Jones, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk. That was really the piece. It was really Tyreek Hill and Brandon Ayuk that just absolutely smashed for this lineup. Ayuk was over 7X, as we'll see. Elijah Moore, pretty good play. Not quite there, though, with under 10 points. And then, but, only 3,800. And then Isaiah Likely. So really just 1 to 2 plays overall, construction-wise. Incredible lineup. He almost got there. He's been there close enough several times that I know Sliders is actually going to get there before we know it. So great job by him. And then let's go ahead and look at what won it. So this is my write-up that I do every week for DFS Army. I've been covering the Millie Maker, doing weekly reviews for a couple years now, a year for DFS Army. So this is over at dfsarmy.com. I drop it every week, and I tweet it out as soon as I write it on my Twitter account at FantasyFling. So give me a follow. But this is the lineup that won. It was 233 points, 11 points more than the next lineup. We had Tua +1 with Tyreek Hill and the Austin Eckler bring back. So just how Sliders had it. Just a couple minor differences. And really, the tight end was the biggest difference, right? Hayden Hurst versus Isaiah Likely. That's 15 points, 14 over Isaiah Likely. And then Kendrick Bourne and Calvin Ridley really crushed it. Kendrick Bourne was one of those guys that he must have been coming up in optimizers because there was really no rhyme or reason to why you would play Kendrick Bourne. They were going against the Philadelphia Eagles. Mac Jones is your quarterback, not Tom Brady, so it's not going to be a shootout. But nonetheless, he was 3,300 and absolutely smashed. Kenneth Walker, he had a groin injury during the week, but yeah, you play him in GPPs. So he had 10 points. Calvin Ridley, I hope he bet on himself to get an anytime touchdown score because he absolutely looked like he didn't miss all of last year. I love him with Trevor Lawrence this year. Just traded for him in Dynasty. Couldn't be more excited. 27 points. And Hayden Hurst, we kind of talked about it. I wrote him up this week. And if the Isaiah Likely news didn't come out, I would have had Hayden Hurst because rookie quarterbacks, they love tight ends, and Bryce Young targeted him a lot. So it was good matchup, good play, and it brought it home. And then Washington D, I don't like to play in the Millie Maker, but with 385,000 people play the same defense, that's going to be the result, right? It was good, not great, but good enough, and that's what brought it home. So the stack that I just identified, Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Austin Eckler, The stack combined for 109 points, 14% ownership. So pretty crazy, right? In a game that everyone was trying to get a piece of in stack, it's pretty crazy that these three players were only 14% owned. So pretty wild stuff. Now that I look at it, that's actually not right. So nonetheless, I think what happened here, Tua was 5%, Eckler was 15%, and then we had Tyreek Hill 23%. So Tua was the leverage play here. Eckler and Tyreek Hill both got quite a bit of ownership. So that was an error. There's, probably, it was probably meant to be more so like 34% as opposed to 14. But Tyreek Hill, one thing that was surprising was he had 23% ownership, and yet Tua only had 5%. So pretty shocked by that, because obviously everyone was kind of looking to stack that game. But when I thought about it, I was like, well, Herbert was actually the one who was gaining most of the ownership. So he got about 13%. And then, it was Tua, it was Herbert, and then Mike Williams and Eckler who were getting, quite a bit of ownership, and Hubert Sachs. And really Tyreek Hill was a bring back, and he was also a one-off. So a lot of people are just forgetting about Tua. I don't know if it's concussions, whatever it may be. But yeah, Tua ended up kind of being a leverage play for this game. And then Kendrick Bourne, 2%. So the field wasn't crazy on him, but yeah, he ended up, obviously, as we're going to get into a little bit, a lot of DFS pros were on him. So when I first looked at this, I was like, okay, I can't really see any reason why anyone is on Kendrick Bourne. But when you start to see the same DFS pros being way over the field on Kendrick Bourne, obviously there's a little bit something there. So Brandon Ayuk, same thing. Now I will say with Brandon Ayuk, and we were kind of all over it at DFS Army. I know Geek was like, listen, Christian McCaffrey, the Debo role, he minimizes it because of all the things he does. Getting a lot of carries, just being electric with the ball in his hands, getting a lot of those dump offs that Debo was. They would create ways to get Debo the ball. Well, now they do that for Christian McCaffrey. So Brandon Ayuk is just overall better wide receiver than Debo Samuel. And, a lot of people were high on him this year because of that in best ball, in redraft, and dynasty. Well, he showed it week 1. He got 8 of 8 targets, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, smashed. So great job for playing Ayuk as a one-off. And then Hayden Hurst, as I just mentioned, he was a great play, and really without the Mark Andrews news, I think Hayden Hurst's ownership is way higher because most people like myself just start jamming Isaiah Likely. Pricing and value. So what we have was, a kind of a lower scoring Millie Maker, considering like week 1 of last year was 250 points. And especially considering that this game stacked a 70-point total game of 70 points when you got Tua, Eckler, and Tyreek Hill from that same game. You kind of think the score would have been higher. Not really. Kind of surprising. Not really a lot to gather from there. I would just say this lineup hit it out of the park, though, with just overall value. When you look at Brandon Ayuk, 7x the salary, Kendrick Bourne, 7x the salary, and then Tyreek Hill at 8,200, 5x the salary. So there was some really good standouts, but I think it was just kind of brought down by like a Kenneth Walker who only 1x the salary. But still, one thing to keep in mind is this player did not spend all of the 50,000. So 49.8, still 4.85x, 233 points. So that's pretty good. Most of the time you will see 5x for the entire lineup. But, the average for most years is going to be about 238 points, like the past 3 years. That's been the average. So this lineup kind of fell a little bit under it. But what was crazy is he was still like far ahead of the field, because second place, like I said, 222 points. He had 233. So pretty crazy. And that's something to keep in mind with the ceiling for Millie Maker winners. So it used to be like it was 250 for like the longest time. It was kind of average, like 245, 250. Well, now we're down. Last year we were at 240. The year before we were at, I think 243 or 233. And then in 2020, we were 243. So we're right about 238. So you don't have to get as crazy with your builds anymore as you used to. 26.4 points per roster spot. You get 9 roster spots in your construction. So keep that in mind. You don't always have to crazy shoot for the moon. Couple sharp pivots here and there, but it's not like you need to like overstack like crazy. In fact, we found in 2021 and in 2022, we've seen a lot of +1 and +2 stacks. So it's kind of just +1 or +2 if the week calls for it, but don't force it. And, just hit your best plays and, just look for value here and there when building your lineup. And of course, Geek cover that in the back testing streams as we talked about earlier. But one thing I want to shout out to before we look into the Millie Maker, the MME strategy of some DFS pros is DFS Armies, Shark Labs, Adam Burns. He actually has been studying Millie Maker winners longer than I have. So I've been doing it about 3 years now. He's been doing it a lot longer than that. And he actually wrote his own book for this. So the link is over at dfsarmy.com. And of course, it's on Amazon. You can look it up, Winning the $1 Million Game. So definitely check that out. Tons of amazing info in there. Just so many years of analysis went into that. So let's go ahead and we are going to go over to Fantasy Labs. And we're just going to look at a little bit of MME strategy before we wrap this up. So what I want to do this year is kind of focus more on some of the people who were winning, because last year my show was more so Millie Maker and MME strategy. So I just want to focus on the people who are winning each and every week and what they're doing and what's working for them. Now, MME strategy, I'm going to preface this by saying most of the time, the top pros, the people who are the best of the best, they lose. But we're going to kind of we're going to condense it and kind of focus more so on the winners. So, and there were a few this week. So we start with Chipotle Addict. Everyone knows Chipotle Addict. I'm more of an illegal pizza addict here in Colorado, but, I still get down on some Chipotle. Kirk Cousins, he kind of kept his quarterback pool condensed. Now, you'll see with some guys, they may have as many as 10 to 20 quarterbacks. He really just focused in on a few guys that he likes at game environments, and I respect that. We talked about it. I've been mentioning it. Herbert, Tua, this is a game environment that we were wanting to target. Now, also Kirk Cousins, because of that Minnesota defense being as porous as it is, Kirk Cousins is a guy that he has the weapons, and their defense is going to give up scores. And actually lost a game to a Tampa Bay defense and, Tampa Bay team that no one thought would be any good. Nonetheless, they have playmakers. They have a bad defense. They're going to push the pace. So 24% ownership. That's what he had with Cousins, Herbert, and Tua. So all these guys did well. I mean, this worked out. As you can see, he had a positive ROI on the day. And then same thing with the running back. So being very over the field. Now, one thing that I like to do looking at MME strategy is there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. So there are people who, like Statsational, who are going to keep just kind of going to be flat, like not too high on ownerships, right? There's a few guys we like with MME, going to get 30%, 25%, maybe 40%, but never going to be like crazy high for the most part. And then, this allows you to mix in a lot of guys. So it's just kind of a different strategy. You just cycle through enough players, you can finally hit that bink. But then there's also people who will go crazy in, which we'll see on, a few players, and they both work, but they're totally different strategies. So the one you go in all in on crazy, crazy exposure on certain players, they know that when it works, they're going to have a great week, but when it doesn't work, they're going to have a bad week. So this is the type of strategy for those who do it that you're going to have more ups and downs, and you have to have the capacity mentally to stomach that. So just keep that in mind. Jamal Williams, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, Raheem Mostert, and Deion Jackson. So Jamal Williams, obviously, with Kendry Miller out, no Kamara, pretty good smash spot. Austin Eckler, I mean, but he's also Jamal Williams. He's not super talented, right? But also 5,100. So I didn't get there to win a tournament, but it didn't kill him because of some of the other sharp plays that he made. Austin Eckler, 40%. Raheem Mostert, that was a good play, 32%. Bijan, 19%. I mean, if Algier doesn't get a bunch of carries, Bijan quite possibly breaks the slate, but they're being smart with him. And then Deion Jackson, 4,100. I didn't think it was a bad play. I don't love him talent-wise, especially with Anthony Richardson vulture potential, but, still love the potential because Deion Jackson is, only $4,100, so it doesn't take really much to break the slate. So just keep that in mind. That is kind of sometimes where you just have to be willing to, even though you don't love the player, when you see the price is so cheap, you probably want to have some exposure to that player. Now, kind of what I was talking about, Tyreek Hill, believe it or not, this is not going to be the highest exposure we see on Tyreek Hill. 72%. Jaden Reed, love it. Love look great. So love all three of these. So Tyreek Hill, Jaden Reed at 3,000. He was definitely a better play over Mims as far as route running, the amount that he did. And then Justin Jefferson. We love Jefferson this week. We love Tyreek Hill, which is why we played them both in our cash lineup and also in GPPs. Marvin Mims, 24%. It was a good play. I don't really know what to make of what happened, except Sean Payton shenanigans, because Marvin Mims played a lot in the third preseason game. They spent a second-round pick on him. And, there was no Judy. And then they called up two guys on the practice squad who ran more routes than Marvin Mims. So I just don't know what to say. But kind of what I was talking about with Kendrick Bourne, all the pros were in on him. So we're going to have to dive a little bit deeper on that. 18%. I'm sure whatever optimizer they were using, he was popping. So Mike Williams, 26%. Mike Williams was a good play at the price in the game environment. Just didn't get there. Got a little banged up. Is what it is. We'll see better things from him. And then Jalen Waddle, 12%. I'll tell you what, I will be playing Tua this next week, and I will probably fade Tyreek Hill, because when you got two studs like this, it's a squeaky wheel. Now we're going to get Jalen Waddle involved. He didn't get involved enough last week. They're going to put coverage over on Tyreek Hill. We're going to get Jalen Waddle a little bit more involved. Chris Godwin, good spot. Jamar Chase, I just don't know what it is about the Bengals. They just don't play very well against the Browns. And then Isaiah Likely, it is what it is. Go back to the $3,000 guy who gets thrusted into a starting role and is likely to get a lot of targets. Well, he didn't. It's just you got to make that decision. 9 times out of 10, I'll be way over the field on a guy that price who has looked good in the past and is now thrusted into a starting role. It's just a lot of leverage to be had. It works out sometimes it doesn't. That's DFS. Luke Musgrave, I think it was a great play too. Would have definitely had a lot more exposure to him if it wasn't for Likely. So, and defense. So one thing I want to point out, under the field on Washington defense, but still a lot. But Tampa, Cleveland, and Las Vegas. So definitely didn't lock it in. Chipotle addict. He's sharp. So the next two DFS Pros. Whistles is one of my favorites. If you've watched my Millie Maker MME Strategy reviews from last year, definitely one of my favorites to cover. Now, I also want to preface this by saying, I just realized this point. Last year, I had the same problem. When it comes to week 1, I don't know what Fantasy Labs' issue is, but they don't seem to have the week 1 $5 milli. They only do the $100 milli. And then week 2 comes, and it's a $20 milli, and it's fine. So it's just very strange. Wasn't able to find it. So we are covering the $100 milli, but it's still 28,000 entries. And nonetheless, it's top DFS Pro. So kind of just wanted to cover their MME strategy. So one thing you will notice about the whistles, now this is funny to me because when it comes to the $20 Millie Maker, I've watched the whistles so many times lock in a quarterback. 150 lineups locked in. Here, look at his exposures: 8%, 4, 4, 9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 7. I mean, so no one is over 10%, and he played 21 different quarterbacks. Now, one thing I will say is when I was looking at all the quarterbacks on the week 1 slate, I was like, how do you pick one? There are too many good value guys, and one of these guys is going to go off and probably break the slate. Of course, it ended up being Tua, but Richardson was a guy just because of his rushing floor. I was like, who knows what kind of game plan? I could totally see it. Baker Mayfield going against Minnesota, 4,900. Sam Howell going against Arizona, so there was a lot of like really good value plays. And so I totally see why his strategy was what it was here. It's just a very hard week to nail down, week 1 shenanigans. Now, he did have a lot of Bijan, 22%, and then 24% Jamal Williams. So, he was pretty heavy on a couple guys. Cam Akers. I mean, just a horrible week for Cam Akers for my teams, but is what it is. And, Kyron Williams looked way better. So something to keep in mind going forward. He had Deion Jackson too, some Eckler. Just even with the field on some of these guys, Kenneth Walker, Raheem Mostert. And it would have been a much better week for Whistles if he had more Aaron Jones. Now, 18% Kendrick Bourne, 12% Juju. Clearly liked New England passing game. And, if there's one thing I would say that I could see the strategy, it's that you think the Eagles are going to come out to some big lead, and you're going to be putting this pass happy game script, and you got cheap guys who can easily make value. So if you look at it from that standpoint, I could totally see it. I could totally see playing Kendrick Bourne and Juju Smith-Schuster on PPR side like DraftKings, just going to get a bunch of targets and receptions. So totally get that. I felt Cortland Sutton was a great play too with Judy out, and obviously he caught a touchdown. And really almost had 2. There was pass interference play. So Keenan Allen, Godwin were pretty even there. And even with Tyreek Hill. So other than that, nothing too crazy with these exposures. Just pretty spread out. But it's not surprising because if you're doing a 21 quarterbacks, right, and you're stacking, you make any kind of stacking rule, which pretty much everyone does, it's going to be hard to, be crazy high in exposures to anyone. So, and then, even with Isaiah Likely was only 20% there. But faded Washington D. And by faded, I mean half the field. So quite a bit under. So pretty good showing from the whistles. I mean, it's $100 an entry. So it's about all you can ask for. Now, the last one we are going to cover is the Fantasy Bros. Didn't max it. Okay. This was 150 max. In fact, before we run off from the whistles, I kind of want to look at some lineups as opposed to exposures. So from what I was seeing earlier when I was looking at this, a lot of quarterback +2 and also some quarterback +1. So in some ways, it kind of depended on the quarterback. We had Tua, Waddle, Tyreek Hill. No, Russell Wilson was just Wilson plus Sutton. And part of this comes down to salary. 5,900. If the quarterback is not super priced, like you don't have a $7,500, $8,000 quarterback, you don't need to sack them with 2 because they don't need 2 to get there, right? So you're doing Wilson and Sutton. These two just barely combined for over 11,000 with their salary. You got Eckler, you got ETN, you got Zay Flowers, you got Hawkinson. Like you've got guys that can. You got Tyreek Hill. You can score a lot of points, so you don't need the stack to go crazy, right? So something to keep in mind, and I think you will see that. Which, if you're setting the optimizer, there's two ways to look at this. You're setting the optimizer QB +1, or you're setting it at least QB +1, and maybe you get some QB +2, or you do two separate runs. You do QB +1 and QB +2, and you might get a combination. So it could just kind of depends. This is 150 lineups, so 149 or 150 is pretty close. But yeah, we got Herbert +2. Oh, was it +2? Yeah, Eckler being 1. And specifically, when you have a pass catching running back, I will not rule out quarterback +1 of his pass catchers. We saw it twice in the Millie Maker last year, where actually multiple times where it was a QB. I think it was 3 different times. QB plus his pass catcher, plus his running back, but every single time the running back caught passes. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, if you get 2 running backs in the same game, but one gets a lot of targets, do not rule them out as far as like a large field GPP goes, because you really have to think about that other running back like a wide receiver. If they're getting 6+ targets a game, 6-10 targets a game, that's a wide receiver. So we wouldn't rule out a quarterback plus one of his wide receivers. So when you get a running back that's getting that many targets, it's the same idea. So Watson +2, with Tua, as Geek would say. Cousins +2, and I feel like Cousins +2 is going to pop up quite a bit this year with Jordan Addison. That dude's legit. And you have TJ Hawkinson, and we know Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the league. So I think we're going to see more Cousins stacks take down GPPs this year. But Cousins is definitely a +2 guy. Debo, 11 points at 5,500, but 5,500 is a lot less than he was last year. I'll tell you that. And yeah, Derek Carr. So these are some of the lineups, only 166, so not enough. But anyways, let's move on and let's wrap this up. Okay. So last one, we got the Fantasy Bros, 80 lineups, super technical with their lineups. This is what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of different ways to scan a cat. We just saw the Whistles, who is an incredible DFS pro. 21 quarterbacks played, and none were over like 10%. So just very under the field and just getting a mixture of everyone. Fantasy Bros, we got Tua, we got Trevor, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert. So really all the guys that we liked over at DFS Army. $13,000 ROI. We had Tua, we had Justin Herbert. This is the game of the week. Trevor Lawrence could go off at any time with all of his ability and his pass catcher. Same with Jalen Hurts, same with Lamar Jackson. There was definitely some rust with Lamar, and Jalen Hurts obviously has going against Bill Belichick. He's going to make things a little more difficult for you to score points. But I thought it was crazy to see Swift 51%. Now, I will say, I think Fantasy Bros made this decision once the news came out that Rashad Penny was a game day inactive, because I had already set my lineups, and I really thought about going in and totally editing everything and trying to get a lot more exposure to Swift and Gainwell. And that's more or less, I'm guessing, what Fantasy Bros did, and definitely was way over on Swift, over on ETN, Raheem Mostert, 40%. And then, the field, no one played Gainwell, still 10% for Gainwell. That's way over the field. So pretty freaking awesome. Very specific exposures, as we are going to see. 100% Tyreek Hill. So talk about lock button. Tyreek Hill, lock him in. Wasn't the only lock button though. Zay Flowers, way over the field on Zay Flowers. So, 4,000, and he looked electric. Great play. Chris Olave, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Waddle, Keenan Allen, and Calvin Ridley. So 30+% exposure to these guys. So very condensed player pool. And this was one of the weeks where it totally worked out. And also didn't play 150. Don't need to play 150 with this pool. It's just kind of like risk reward ratio. Let's just do 80 lineups. These are the guys I like. And it totally worked out in this situation. So, by the way, 100% Isaiah Likely. So just kind of like goes to show you can lock in players. You can be wrong on players and still smash. Now, hindsight's 2020. If he had done 50% Hayden Hurst and 50% Isaiah Likely, probably wins this. And we're talking about $1 million, or done 100% Hayden Hurst, definitely is a lot closer to winning it. But that's just how it goes. Still had an incredible day. Saw the value, saw the potential there. It didn't work out. That's DFS. You can't play scared in this game. You have to take stands. That's how you win. It's also how you lose. So just keep that in mind. Just trying to show different strategies that can both win and lose you a lot of money. Jacksonville, 56%. So way all in on Jacksonville, under on Washington. But yeah, right there, you got like 75% between two defenses. So Jacksonville, I think, was a really good play. In this, it's wasn't the top defense of the day. No one really thought Arizona would be. And that just goes to the variance of the defense position. And, that is the one thing where I would say, like, specifically in GPPs, I will not go crazy. I will not go all in on a play just because there's just too much variance in GPPs. So in defense. So it's best to just get a little bit of exposure here and there and mix it up. But I think that's going to do it. We'll be back. Obviously, I'll be doing the cash game strategy for DFS Army VIPs on Thursday night. So if you're not a DFS Army VIP, now's the time. We started the year, Thursday Night Football, $100,000 from LOL Advantage. He's an esports guy. Use the tools, best tools in the industry, still won $100,000. We had multiple takedowns last night on the showdown with the Giants and the Cowboys. And there's going to be a lot more to come. We got so many more shows this year. We're doing Shark Labs with Burns and Kevin Allen. We're still doing the game plan, tournament tactics, you name it. And, of course, we got the Players Club on Saturday. So if you're not a DFS Army VIP, that's fine. Definitely hit that like button, hit that comment, subscribe, share, do all those things. But if you want to be a VIP and win with DFS Army, go ahead and use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. So we'll see y'all next week. Best of luck. Let's win some money.